I've always been a woman of routines. I'd wake up early, drink my strong black coffee, wipe down the living room floor, and then water my plants with the calmness of someone who'd learned to talk to silence. It had been that way since I retired. The house, the same one where my children took their first steps, became my sanctuary. Every wall held a memory. Every creak in the floorboards told stories I no longer needed to hear because they all lived inside me. I was never rich, but I never lacked what was necessary. With what I earned as a caregiver over the years, I managed to keep my little place. With sacrifice, of course. My children grew up seeing that. They saw the nights I pretended to be asleep, so they wouldn't see me cry. They saw how I skipped meals so they'd have snacks for school. I never asked for anything in return. I only wanted respect, gratitude, simple things.
But the years went by.
And the boys turned into hurried men, full of opinions and short on time. They visited me once a month, sometimes not even that. And when they did, they brought hurry in their pockets and boredom in their eyes. I pretended not to notice. I made cornbread, asked about their girlfriends, their jobs. They always answered with short sentences, eyes fixed on their phones. Everything changed the day that letter arrived. A thick envelope with stamps and an official seal. I opened it with trembling hands, thinking it was a tax mistake. But it wasn't. It was a legal notice. The house I had lived in for over 30 years had been sold, and the new owner was demanding I leave within 30 days. I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, the paper in my hands, as if I had just been slapped. I reread every line, every word. SOLD.
How? When?
Who? The name on the document belonged to an unknown buyer. But what hurt the most was the name of the person who had handled the sale, my eldest son. In that moment, something inside me collapsed. A heavy silence filled the house. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat at the table, stared out the window, and let time pass. That night, I called him. His voice answered like it was just any other day. "Hey, Mom. How are you?" I wanted to believe it was a mistake. That he'd say, "Mom, I'm sorry. It was all a misunderstanding." But he didn't. "You've been alone there for too long. That house is too big, Raphael, and I thought it'd be better to take care of this now. It's better for everyone." Take care of this? And you decided that without me. Oh, Mom, let's be honest. You're not really in a position to handle everything on your own anymore. And what are you going to do with a house like that, with how things are? I went silent. On the other end, he spoke as if I were an old piece of furniture they'd finally decided to move out of the way. I hung up. That night, I lay down on the living room couch and cried for the first time in years. But it wasn't just sadness. It was a deep ache, the kind you feel when you realize you haven't been forgotten. You've been discarded. In the following days, the two of them came to my house. Not to apologize, but to explain better their decision. They said it was for the best, that I needed help, that there was a nice care home near Raphael's place. They even brought brochures like it was some vacation hotel. I looked at them and tried to understand. When did I stop being their mother and become a burden? They thought I was fragile, that I'd stay quiet, that I had no choice. But there was something they didn't know, something I'd kept hidden for years. Something that would give me the chance to turn this story upside down. But in that moment, all I had was pain. And a piece of paper saying the house where I watched my children learn to walk now belonged to someone else. And they were the ones who sold the keys. In the days following the discovery of the betrayal, everything felt unrecognizable. It was as if I had woken up in a house that was no longer mine. Even with my furniture, my curtains, and the smell of coffee, I still made out of stubbornness. Every corner reminded me that I was now just a visitor in my own story. The children I once nursed at my breast now wanted to see me in a nursing home bed, preferably far enough away not to interfere with their hurried lives. For an entire week, I couldn't leave the house. I stayed silent. I didn't answer messages. I didn't pick up calls. They tried to calm me down, to convince me that this was for the best. Raphael, the youngest, sent me a voice message that I listened to and deleted immediately. "Mom, you're taking this the wrong way. Think about your comfort. You'll have care, company. You won't have to worry about power bills or stairs anymore. It's luxury. Luxury. They spoke of luxury as if it were some indulgence I didn't deserve, as if they were gifting me a better fate. But I knew the truth. They were removing me from the picture because they had already made their plans. I heard from a gossiping neighbor that Kaio was already talking about using the money from the sale to buy a new car and invest the rest in cryptocurrency, whatever that is. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had a secret. Years ago, when I was still working as a caregiver for a very wealthy and lonely man, I was surprised by an unexpected inheritance. He had no close family, and, in his final days, I was his only real companion. He used to say I reminded him of his late wife, a woman with a strong voice and a faithful heart. When he died, he left me an absurd amount of money. More than I ever imagined I'd see in a lifetime. I saved every penny in an anonymous fund. I hired a trusted accountant who never knew my full name. I told no one, not even my sons, because I knew their ambition. And I also knew how fleeting their gratitude toward me could be. I used that money to quietly secure my retirement. I discreetly bought a house by the sea. And I waited. But that wasn't the plan. I just wanted to live in peace, maybe grow old quietly. But now they had shown me they didn't see me as a mother. They saw me as traffic, as an obstacle. And if that was the case, then I would stop acting like I needed their permission to live. On a cold Wednesday morning, I got up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and said aloud, "Today you start over." I put on my best outfit, grabbed my documents, and went to the bank where the fortune had been sleeping for nearly a decade. I walked in, sat down in front of the manager, and asked for the full withdrawal of the account. He looked at me with surprise. "Are you sure, ma'am?" he asked. "Absolutely." With the receipt in hand, I left there feeling like a different woman. For the first time in a long time, I was in control. I went back home, sat on the couch, and started planning. I called a trusted real estate agent and scheduled a visit to the beach house I already owned in secret. I also called a moving company. In 3 days, everything would be ready. I wasn't going to wait to be dragged into a care home. I would leave with my head held high. That afternoon, Kaio showed up unannounced. He came in already talking loudly, as he always did when trying to impose his logic. "Mom, listen, Raphael, and I already found a great place for you. It has a porch, a garden, other ladies your age to chat with." I interrupted him with a gesture. I stood up, went to the closet, grabbed 2 suitcases, and calmly started packing my clothes. "What are you doing?" he asked, a hint of fear in his voice. "Packing my things. I'm leaving." "But where to?" "To my home. The real one. The one you don't get to touch." He went pale. He asked more questions, insisted. But I gave no further details. He didn't need to know. This was my choice, my destination. For the first time, I was taking the reins of my life without asking permission. The next day, when Raphael arrived, he found the house empty. The bags had already gone with the movers. I was at the door, waiting for the taxi that would take me to the station. I looked at him with an expression that mixed pain and freedom. "You could have trusted me, Mom," he said, almost in a whisper. "And you could have respected me, son." I got into the car and didn't look back. The city grew small in the rearview mirror, along with all the bitter memories. I took with me only what truly belonged to me, my strength, my dignity, and the keys to my new life. The road was long, and the sea seemed to call to me even before I could see it. With each kilometer, I felt I was leaving behind not just a house, but a story, a version of myself that no longer existed. In my suitcase, along with clothes and documents, I carried what was left of silence, suppressed tears, and swallowed rage over the years. I wasn't running away. I was heading toward myself. When the taxi rounded the final bend and the house appeared, white, with wide windows and a direct view of the sea, something inside me unraveled. It wasn't just a place. It was a symbol, a sanctuary, a living reminder that I had been able to build an escape route at the exact moment everyone thought I had nowhere else to go. The driver unloaded the bags and said goodbye with a discreet smile. I stood there for a few minutes, facing the door, as if waiting for a sign, a whisper of courage. But the only sound was the salty wind rustling the palm trees.
And that was enough.
I went in. The house smelled of fresh wood and sea breeze. It was simple, but beautiful.
Bright.
Free of authoritarian voices, muffled screams, and slamming doors. There were no children to judge my clothes, no mothers-in-law to critique my cooking. Here, at last, I was just me. The woman who survived. The woman who built her own escape, with hands calloused from care and eyes deep from waiting. I spent the first few days rearranging furniture, hanging old pictures, putting up light curtains on the windows. At night, I lay on the couch with a glass of wine and listened to the sound of the waves like someone hearing a secret.
I cried, yes.
Not out of sadness, but relief. Because for the first time in decades, no one needed me. And that, which once terrified me, now set me free. I began to create a routine of my own. I walked barefoot on the sand every morning, felt the cold water on my ankles, and let the sun slowly warm my skin. I cooked for myself, wrote in old notebooks, tended the small garden in the back. And I listened. I listened to the woman I had been, the woman I had let go of, and the one I still could become. I didn't miss the old house. I missed the smiles that once lived in it, but not the people who turned it into a battlefield. And I was no longer willing to fight for crumbs of affection. Then came the first phone call. It was Raphael. Mom? Where are you? We're worried. It took me a few seconds to respond. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I didn't want to risk answering in the old tone, that tone of guilt, of submission. I'm where I should have been a long time ago, Raphael. At peace. There was silence on the other end. Then a sigh. We didn't think you'd really leave. But you didn't know you'd sell me like an old piece of furniture. We just wanted what was best for you. I laughed. Not with sarcasm, but with the clarity of someone who had finally understood everything. You wanted what was best for yourselves, son. And that's okay. I've just decided to want what's best for me, too. He cried. I heard it. And for the first time, I wasn't the handkerchief. I was just a listener. Because it was no longer my role to fix others' broken pieces while mine still bled. In the following days, more calls came. Kyle wrote me a long email, full of regrets and distorted childhood memories. He said he now saw things differently, that he no longer blamed me for being a tough, demanding mother, that he admired me for having endured so much. I didn't reply, not yet, because at that moment, I needed to learn to admire myself first. I started meeting the neighbors. There was an Uruguayan woman who made wonderful bread and told me she had also been discarded by her children. A quiet, widowed fisherman who always left a fresh fish hanging on my gate without saying a word, and a young nurse renting a room in the back who dreamed of opening her own practice. Gradually, I was adopted by this new, quiet, respectful world. No one wanted to manage me. They simply welcomed me as I was. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with a notebook and wrote the following sentence. You don't have to be a martyr to be a mother. And you don't have to be a mother all the time to deserve love. It felt like a manifesto.
A release.
A sentence that finally sealed my rebirth. I started online therapy. For the first time, I spoke out loud about the fear of not being loved unless I was serving. About the addiction to giving until there was nothing left. About the shame of hiding the inheritance because I knew that if I told them, they would drain me to the last cent. I cried a lot. But I laughed too, because freedom tastes salty and sweet at the same time. Then, one morning, I woke up with an impulse. I picked up my phone and wrote to both sons, in a group chat that, until then, had only served for demands, grocery lists, and arguments. I'm fine. Don't look for me. If one day you want to see me, come without requests, without excuses, and without hidden intentions. Come as sons who understand the value of the woman who gave you life. Until then, take care of yourselves. I am finally taking care of me. I sent it and closed the phone. There was no immediate response. And that was okay. Because, for the first time, it didn't matter. I was whole. And I was alone, but not lonely, because the solitude I now had was a choice, not abandonment. That night, the sea roared louder. I opened the window and let the wind in. I danced through the living room with bare feet, just like I used to when I was a girl dreaming of being a writer or an actress, or something that would take me out of the role of eternal caregiver. And there, under the moonlight, I understood that children can bury us alive. But only we have the power to unearth our roots, replant our dreams, and bloom where no one expected. The days passed like calm waves, one over the other, gently breaking on the beach in front of my house. There was a light, almost sacred routine. Freshly brewed coffee, the smell of cake in the oven, reading in the hammock. My feet knew the path to the sea, and my hands had forgotten the rush. I existed. Just that. Existed without requests, without roles, without "Mom, can you do this?" Without "You need to understand." It was on a Thursday that everything changed again. I heard a car pull up. It wasn't a delivery nor a neighbor. The sound of suitcases being dragged across the stone floor stirred a deep intuition in me. I opened the curtain and saw them both, Raphael and Caio. The two sons who had called me a burden, an obstacle, a setback in life. The ones who sold my house without asking, who planned to put me in a nursing home with the coldness of someone planning a simple move. And there they were, standing in front of my white gate, as if time had frozen their eyes. My heart raced, but not from fear, from firmness. I opened the door slowly, not with that old urgency, the one where I'd rush to greet them, make food, ask how they were. This time, I went as I am now, whole. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice calm but steady. They looked at each other. Raphael took a step forward. Caio, more reserved, stayed a bit behind. "Mom, we came to see you. We needed to." "Needed to?" I asked. "Or wanted to?" Silence. "We're sorry, Mom. For everything. Selling the house, the nursing home plan, the way we spoke to you. I haven't slept well since that day," Raphael said, his eyes full of tears. Caio finally looked up, and for the first time, I saw something new in him. Shame. "We were cruel, Mom. We treated you like a burden, like you had passed your expiration date. But after you left, everything fell apart. The house became an empty place, even though it was full. The food lost its taste. The silence screamed. I listened, attentively, present, but also with distance. It was no longer my role to absorb their pain like a sponge. I was solid ground now, and whoever wanted to approach had to come barefoot, humble, truly. I don't want you to beg. I'm not interested in tears born from the shock of losing me. I want to know if, deep down, you can see me, not as the mother who fixes everything, but as the woman who exists, who feels, who carries her own story." Raphael nodded. He was crying openly now. Caio swallowed hard. "We want to know that woman. If you'll let us." "And if I don't?" They stood still. I took a deep breath and opened the gate. "Come in. But understand one thing. This house is not a shelter for regrets. It's a space for rebuilding. And rebuilding takes time, humility, and silence. A lot of silence. Are you ready to listen?" They nodded, and I let them in. We made lunch together. Or rather, they tried. Raphael burned the rice. Caio cut the vegetables unevenly. But for the first time they were there. Present. Not demanding anything. Just offering the help I had silently begged for so many times in the past. During the meal we spoke little. They asked about my routine, the neighbors, the sea. I answered lightly, but made it clear. This peace had cost me too much to be disturbed by emotional urgency. After lunch, we walked on the beach. I watched them as if seeing two adults for the first time. They walked slowly, heads down, searching for words, until Raphael spoke. "Do you remember, Mom, that day I got really sick and you stayed up all night on my bedroom floor? I had a high fever and was delirious. And you stayed there, with wet towels and whispering prayers." I nodded. "That night, you saved my life. And I never thanked you. On the contrary, I grew up judging you. And now I understand. I was too small to see the size of your sacrifice. Kaio also spoke, his voice choked. I hated you, Mom. When you said no, when you didn't give me money, when you told me to figure things out myself. I thought you were cold. Now I see you were teaching me to be a man. But I didn't understand. And because I didn't understand, I hurt you. The words were heavy, but necessary. You buried me alive, my sons. But I had the strength to dig myself out. And that no one can take away from me. They hugged me, for the first time in years, without rush. A real hug, with weight, with warmth. And I cried. Because I'm still a mother. But I cried for me. They stayed that night. Slept on the couch and an improvised mattress. I covered them with light blankets. Made tea. But no longer as a servant. As a host. As a woman. The next morning they left. Without asking for anything. Without demands. Just a note. Thank you for letting us come back. We promise to return better. I stayed there, with the note in my hands, the sea in front of me, and the breeze coming through the window. I didn't know if they would keep the promise. But I knew something had changed. They had seen what happens when a woman stops asking for permission to live. And I had proven to myself that the freedom I found was non-negotiable. They came back more often. Slowly, like someone learning to walk on new ground, full of stones and half-healed wounds. One would come on Saturday, the other on Sunday. They brought bread, plants, sometimes nothing. Just their presence. Sometimes it was just silence. And honestly, their silence was better than all the speeches they had ever made in their lives. For weeks, they didn't ask me for anything. No favors, no help, no money. They just wanted to be there. Or to seem like they did. But I wasn't naive anymore. I had learned to read their eyes. To tell the difference between genuine remorse and a strategy to win me back. They looked at me differently. With caution. As if they were afraid to break me, or to lose me for good. And me? I was trying not to lose myself. For the first time in my life, I was building something of my own, something not stitched together with other people's expectations. I woke up to the sound of birds and went to sleep without the weight of guilt. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Just to exist. And for me, that was already a miracle. Then one autumn afternoon, Kaio came alone. He came serious, with a cardboard box in his hands. Mom, can I come in? I nodded. He entered like someone stepping into a sanctuary. With respect. But also with a sense of urgency. He placed the box on the table and pulled out a chair. I need to tell you something. Something that might change everything. But before I say it, I want you to know I understand if you don't want to forgive me. Silence. Raphael is in bad shape. He got into debt. Gambling, bad business decisions. And he used the money from the house sale. All of it. Even the part we thought would be your inheritance. My heart tightened. Not from surprise, but from confirmation. Something in me had always known that quick sale, his rush to get rid of the house where we had been happy, hid more than coldness. It hid desperation. And you? I asked. Were you part of it? He shook his head. Not directly. But I was complicit. I stayed quiet. I benefited from part of the money. And when you left, it was like my conscience started screaming. I couldn't pretend everything was okay anymore. I opened the box. Inside were papers, receipts, bank statements, even a handwritten letter from Raphael. An apology. Messy, confused, but real. And beside it, there was a small black folder sealed by a notary office. He wants to give back what he can. Put whatever is left in your name. It's not much, Mom, but it's what he has. I closed the box, stood up, walked to the porch. The sea was calm, but steady, like me. Kaio followed, but remained silent. Do you know what hurts the most, Kaio? It's not the money, not even the house. It's realizing that for years, I was invisible to you both. Like just another piece of the puzzle you were forcing together. I know, he replied. And that's what scares me the most. Then listen. I'm not going back to that world. I won't go back to being the manager of your emotional crises. I won't let your guilt steer the course of my life. So, there's no going back? He asked, his eyes glassy. There can be reconciliation. There can be forgiveness. There can be love. But there will be no more submission.
We looked at each other.
For the first time, as equals, he saw me as a woman. Not a mother. Not a servant. Not a martyr. A woman. And I saw him as a man. Scared, confused, but willing to begin. I want you to know I'm here. But only if it's real. No manipulation. No guilt trips. No old dynamic where you two made the rules. He nodded, pressed his lips together, and with a trembling voice, said, I admire you, Mom. For the first time in my life, I admire you not for what you did for me, but for what you've done for yourself. I cried, not out of pain, but out of relief, for finally hearing what so many mothers go their whole lives without hearing, recognition. He left that night, and I sat on the porch until the last ray of sun disappeared. The box was still on the table, but I knew the greatest restitution I could ever receive didn't fit in there. It was my rebirth. The version of me that died when they called me a burden would never return. And the woman born from that grief had finally learned to choose herself.